All right, guys, so we got to talk about what's going on in China, as there is a anti-lockdown uprising going on in protest of the COVID-19 measures that have been put in place by the CCP. Now, this is something Democrats really don't want to talk about because they have been pro-lockdown. They've been pro-COVID-19 protective measures, a bunch of things that just were not good for the world. And if they cover this stuff, right, and the authoritarianism from the Chinese government, they're going to see that it didn't look all that much different than, for example, what was going on north of the border in Canada and what the Biden administration was basically trying to do, right, to the American citizens, what the Democrats wanted to do to this country. So they just kind of ignore it, okay? But we have some serious problems going on as Apple is involved in this, and apparently they are participating in the censorship coming from the Chinese government as they are restricting airdrop file sharing in China that protesters have used. Now, protesters have used Apple's airdrop file sharing, I guess, application to share information, right? To communicate, to basically, again, come together in protest of the government. Now, because Apple is in bed with China, right, and the Chinese government, they comply, okay? They comply and they restrict the freedoms of Chinese citizens. Again, these are the same companies that want you to think that they're so morally superior and holier than everybody else, okay? So we want to talk about that. But first, what I want to do is I want to play a clip of Apple CEO Tim Cook kissing the ring of the CCP, just so you guys can get an accurate depiction of just how far in bed Apple is with the Chinese government. Take a look.
China's done an unbelievable job of lifting people out of poverty. They've done an incredible job, I mean, far beyond what any country has done. We were talking about mid-90s to today. The biggest change is the number of people that have been pulled out of poverty by far, and we should all applaud that. And we should all feel good about it. And so there are, in the environmental leadership today is very clear, and it aligns completely with Apple's values.
The Chinese environmental leadership, government.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're very fixated on doing the right things to avert climate change.
Yeah, so Tim Cook and Apple, they love the CCP, right? They love the communist government because the number one polluter in the world is doing so much in leading the fight against climate change. Right. That's what they want you to believe. So that being said, what was the White House's response to this authoritarian crackdown in China? Well, not condemn Apple, right, for basically blocking access to the internet, and not to condemn the Chinese government.
China, has the White House communicated to Beijing any possible consequences of its crackdown on protesters? And also, is the White House considering saying something or using existing U.S. government tools to help Chinese citizens get around internet blocks?
So I don't have anything to preview for you at this time on anything connected to the social media. Your second question, I don't have any calls to preview for you at this time. Look, we've been very clear that people have a right to peacefully protest without fear. And we don't think that right should be hindered or interfered with. Nothing has changed about the president's firm belief in the universality of human rights and power of democracy. And so we will continue to express our support for the fundamental freedom. The United States will also continue to stand for respect for freedom of the press and freedom of expression. No journalist should be arrested or beaten or harassed for simply doing their job, as it comes to some of the reports that we've been hearing on the ground. And we're watching this closely, as you might expect that we would. And we believe that that people should have the right, again, to peacefully protest.
Yeah, so basically they don't have a response, right? They don't have a response. They're not going to condemn the government. They're not going to condemn some of these American companies, and I say American loosely, like Apple, that are participating in this crackdown on the people, okay? They're not really going to do anything because, low-key, they agree with it, right? They wish they had the same powers that the CCP does, right? Biden, he basically tried to use the pandemic to accumulate and accrue those types of powers as president of the United States. So they're low-key jealous, right? So they're not really going to have all that much to say about it because they're jealous. They're jealous. Meanwhile, again, we have Apple in the US threatening to take Twitter off of the App Store in protest of Elon Musk allowing free speech on the platform. And of course, we have the mainstream media, CNN, defending this while also ignoring Apple in their role in cracking down on the Chinese citizens. Take a look.
Elon Musk says that Apple threatened to pull Twitter from its App Store, a move that could devastate the company he recently acquired for $44 billion.
Yeah, and another string of tweets, Musk took aim at Apple and its CEO Tim Cook, alleging that there was no explanation that Apple was engaging in censorship and that the move could undermine Twitter's business, which Musk says has seen a massive drop in revenue as more brands pause ads there. Here with us now is CNN's Donny O'Sullivan. So, Donny, here we are again trying to explain what is going on in Musk world. He and Cook do have a long relationship. We haven't heard from Cook. That's not typically his style. But what can you tell us about what's going on now?
Yeah, so Apple basically have a quality control in their app store. So before anything can go on your phone, they will go through apps to make sure, one, there's not viruses or kind of spyware on it that could end up spying on you. But also they have quality controls in place when it comes to hate speech and also COVID misinformation. We saw last year the right-wing social media platform Parler was kicked off the Apple App Store temporarily for a few months until it got its hate speech policies in place in a way that Apple were happy enough with. Obviously, what we're seeing with Elon Musk now is that he is tearing apart the rulebook at Twitter, and I think what we're seeing is that potentially Apple might have some problems with it. Of course, we haven't heard officially from Apple just yet. Speaking of those policies, we learned overnight, I want to show you this from the Twitter website, Twitter had a misinformation policy against COVID misinformation in place since 2020. That is no more. They have ripped that up. As part of that policy, 11,000 accounts were suspended, were banned. We may see many of those accounts coming back. That is something that Musk has promised. He said accounts that were banned would be coming back. So a lot happening at the platform right now. People knew that it was going to be crazy under Elon Musk. It certainly is a roller coaster. And later this evening, we're at a NICE Foundation event here in Florida. On that stage, a little later tonight, a very senior Twitter employee, Yoel Roth, who was involved in implementing a lot of these policies, who worked with Musk but quit a few weeks ago, will be speaking out for the first time tonight.
A lot happening at Twitter, a lot happening behind you there. You successfully managed your way through it and explaining what's going on. Bravo, Donny Sullivan. Thank you for joining us.
But the good news is that we do have at least one Republican that is standing up and actually calling for real action against Apple for their totalitarian methods of not only, again, cracking down on the Chinese citizens, but also cracking down on American citizens here in our free speech. And that is Ron DeSantis, who went as far as to say that Apple could face some consequences from Congress in response to them threatening to take Twitter off of the App Store. Take a look.
Very concerning. And then when you also hear reports that Apple is threatening to remove Twitter from the App Store because Elon Musk is actually opening it up for free speech and is restoring a lot of accounts that were unfairly and illegitimately suspended for putting out accurate information about COVID. That's like one of the main things that's being reinstated. So many things these experts were wrong at, and you had people on Twitter that were calling that out. And Twitter, the old regime in Twitter, their response was to try to just suffocate the dissent. And Elon Musk knows that's not a winning formula, and so he's providing free speech. And so if Apple responds to that, by nuking them from the App Store, I think that would be a huge, huge mistake. and it would be a really raw exercise of monopolistic power that I think would merit a response from the United States Congress. And so don't be a vassal of the CCP on one hand and then use your corporate power in the United States on the other to suffocate Americans and try to suppress their right to express themselves.
Yeah, that is Ron DeSantis actually taking some leadership. I mean, this is actually very interesting because, again, the speculation is that Ron DeSantis is going to run for president. Now, we don't know that for sure. The speculation is that he is, and I know a lot of people are not necessarily comfortable with, the idea of Trump and Ron DeSantis going up against each other. But as far as this video is concerned, Ron DeSantis, at least there, it seems like to me, he is basically calling for congressional action, okay? He is actually channeling some Teddy Roosevelt, okay? Because the last time the Republican Party has been against monopolies was basically Teddy Roosevelt, right? He was the last, I guess, kind of Republican trust buster, if you don't count his successor, William Taft, as a trust buster, which he was. I mean, some people argue that he was actually more effective at that than Teddy Roosevelt, but I'm just saying, it's been a long time, right? And I think the Republican Party needs some Teddy Roosevelt, right? They need some Teddy Roosevelt type of energy, especially when we're talking about big corporate America in a time where companies like Apple have gone woke, okay? They run around and they try to act like they're so morally superior to everybody else, but they only do that for virtue signaling points in the United States, while at the same time in China, they do whatever the government tells them to do, which includes suppressing the ability of citizens to freely communicate and protest against the government. Again, it's absolutely disgusting. Okay, it's absolutely disgusting. And if they were to just nuke Twitter from the App Store, again, it would be an exercise of monopolistic power that if Republicans had a backbone, right, they would actually go after Apple for that. Now, I know for a fact that Josh Hawley, who's already written a letter to Tim Cook demanding answers, I know for a fact that he's going to come out and fight for this, right? He's going to go out and fight against Apple because of this. I got Ron DeSantis. Who else do we got on board, right? Who else do we got on board? Okay? See, that's the question for the Republican Party. Are you going to continue to be shields for corporate America? Or are you actually going to stand up to these woke corporations? I mean, because it sounds to me like Ron DeSantis made Disney kind of, reevaluate their business model and pushing wokeness on kids after Ron DeSantis went to war with them.
Here's a virtual question. Many cast members had wished that Disney stayed out of politics. Will Disney stay out of making political statements?
Do I like the company being embroiled in controversy? Of course not. It can be distracting, and it can have a negative impact on the company. And to the extent that I can work to kind of quiet things down, I'm going to do that. But I think it's important to put in perspective what some of these subjects are and not just simply brand them political. I was sorry to see us dragged into that battle, and I have no idea exactly what its ramifications are in terms of the business itself. What I can say is the state of Florida has been important to us for a long time, and we have been very important to the state of Florida. That is something I'm extremely mindful of and will articulate if I get the chance.
How do you respond to that? He's talking about you.
We didn't drag them in, Tucker. They went in on their own and not only opposed the bill, they threatened to get it repealed. These are parents' rights, important policies in our state that are very popular. And so they brought this on themselves. Yeah. All we did was stand up for what's right. And yes, they're a big, powerful company. But you know what? We stand up for our folks. And I don't care what a Burbank-based California company says about our laws.
Yeah, that's the kind of leadership that we need against woke corporate America. Okay, I'm so serious about that. Right? I mean, I really do think that Republicans have to move away from just kissing corporate American ass to saying, look, you guys don't like us. You don't like our people. So therefore, again, why should we be so supportive of you, especially considering your agenda, right? You guys love the Democrats. All right, cool. We'll start taxing you, right? We'll tax the woke, right? We're taxing the woke, okay? And we'll focus on small business. We'll focus on the working class. I'm just saying. Ron DeSantis, what he did with Disney, it seems to be working, right? They seem to be rethinking their involvement in politics. Now, again, will that result in them actually changing their content? Who knows? But at the very least, maybe they will stay out of politics. Maybe they won't be working to lobby, aka buy politicians, to overturn legislation that helps parents have a more transparent understanding of what's going on in schools and protects children. Because again, these corporations, man, they've overstepped their boundaries. They're not for the people. They're really not. And if this situation with Twitter and what's going on in China doesn't show you that these corporations are against American people, I don't know what will, right? They're against your fundamental rights. That's it. I mean, it is what it is. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.